We have a new sponsor of ad spend. Do you hate money? Well, if you hate money, you're going to hate retention.com. If you love money, you're going to love retention.com. And you're going to hear a little bit more about them later in the show, but you can go sign up right at retention.com if you can't wait till then. Enjoy the episode of Ad Spend exclusively on the Triple Whale Network.
Our ability to serve our customers is representative of the trust that we're building with them and the integrity that we have as a brand. And so we manage those relationships very carefully. Just like owning a restaurant, if you serve a really bad meal and the customer goes outside and starts screaming that this is the worst restaurant in the world or goes online, that all of a sudden becomes a story and then that's a big thing and now your restaurant's out of business. You have to really be careful about that trust that you're building and the consistency by which you deliver on the promise you're making. Our brand is so big and so ubiquitous that we're willing to take some black eyes along the way.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of your favorite D2C podcast. I've been trying to wrangle this guy. He's even in Austin, just absolutely been on his tail. And finally, I nailed him down. Anyways, scheduling conflicts aside, Nate, dude, super happy to have you on. Thank you for coming on. COO, of Feet, a myriad of other accolades that we don't need to get into because the podcast is long enough. But we're going to jam on some really cool stuff today. But I buried the lead. Melwani and the gorgeous RIP Geek Out artist, formerly known as Geek Out, now Geek X, the Miami Heat. Melwani, how you doing?
Good, man. How's everything over in Austin?
It's actually sensational. It's not a cloud in the sky. It's like San Diego weather. It's one of those times where you feel almost irresponsible or like if you don't get outside. It's that. I mean, Nate's in the city as well. It's spectacular. This is the best time in Austin in my opinion because June, July, August hits and it's proper hot. It gets a little.
I need a redo, man. When I came, we brought the snow. So
I still hear from people from that with the Whaleys where they still give me crap about it. But before we get into kind of the meat of it, we have to address the elephant in the room, right? So for people that have been living under a rock and or are not really in the media buying space, Facebook had a bug. I think one of the things that there is some empathy here where software is created by humans. So I have a really high level technical guy and he always calls me out when I bitch about stuff where he's like, yeah, but, and like, however, I feel like this one's a little different, right?
So over the weekend, right, I think for a lot of advertisers, primarily in the U.S., I'm not entirely sure about international, but around the hours of like 4 a.m. to around 10 a.m., there's a bug with accelerated ad spend, right? CPMs jacked up, CPCs jacked up, CTRs decreased. Obviously, conversion rate was non-existent, right? It just kind of, I think Facebook and Instagram, Meta in general, just blew through 80 to almost 90% of everyone's daily budgets in a matter of hours. If you were using cost caps, those budgets got ran through, right? Any type of like cap that you put in or limits that you put in got blown through. Any rules you set up got blown through. Just for context, I woke up at around 10 a.m. My phone was getting blown up by AJ. Thank God he was paying attention because I wasn't. And I checked the ad spend and we spent $26,000 by like 10 a.m. Right? Granted, our daily budget's only $20K, and so turned to Twitter. Everyone's like, "What is going on?" Everyone's confused, and like that's where I had like a little bit of a sigh of relief because it was like, okay, it's not just me,
right?
And it's happening to everyone, and I think throughout that entire day, everyone's trying to do damage control. Everyone's like, do we turn off ads? Do we keep them on? What do we do? We turned stuff off, especially the cost cap campaign, because that was just kind of going rampant. The other campaigns, I think hindsight, because they already blew through 80, 90% of the budget, I probably would have been okay keeping them on. And because there's not much left to spend throughout the rest of the day, right? But the cost caps for sure. And I think one of the biggest things here that is still on everyone's minds is, are we getting a refund? Right. What does the communication look like from Meta? This is something where a lot of small businesses were impacted. I mean, even that day, like for us, I mean, we blew through a chunk of cash, and not a lot of communication has happened. But I do have an update. I did speak to my rep this morning, got a text saying they've been getting emails from their managers talking about refunds and what the process has to look like. The time frame is uncertain just because, one, they're still investigating. There's a lot of teams that need to be involved, right, from the engineers to legal to finance to comms. So it is tough for a big organization to arrive at one solution. And how do they handle that? So it makes sense why it will take time. But I think a lot of advertisers are or do deserve some type of communication as to what is happening rather than being left in the dark. So take it from there.
Yeah, that's a great synopsis. I would also add in there was some ads manager access, which would also exacerbate your situation where there were people that were trying to turn off campaigns, couldn't get an ads manager. I mean, it was as close to a dumpster fire as you get. And, candidly, the hours that they blew through the budgets are not really big buying times, especially in the States. Like, nobody's really shopping from 6 to 9 a.m., 6 to 10 a.m. Like, people are still getting up, they're doing stuff with their kids, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for me, the biggest thing was horrible PR. Like, there could have been something where it's like, hey, I haven't even really seen them really acknowledge it that much. But, at the same time, stock is screaming. They just posted outrageous numbers. And so, like, incentives are, like, I don't think people are good and bad. People are incentivized by incentives. And so, I don't know. If you were running Facebook, Nate, if you were the Zuck, what would you do? Because you're operations genius, very great communicator. How do you think Facebook could have done a better job here?
I was in the sort of same boat as you guys, and Fee was in the same boat, waking up that morning. Shout out to like D2C Twitter, which, has its like pluses and minuses in terms of like the content that's shared there and how valuable it is. But this was one case where I feel like it's a crisis and everyone sort of rallied around and there was good information shared. And people were able to like go in, check their ad account really quickly on a Sunday morning, which normally you're like drinking coffee and relaxing. But everyone sort of jumped in and, turned off the faucet or at least like checked in on how things were going. So that was like a silver lining in all of this. If I'm like Zuck or several levels below Zuck, kind of managing, the auction and sort of the ad environment in Facebook, and in light of like their recent earnings, right? I would just like mea culpa this whole situation.
Yes.
And I would say like, look, this is, we're an organization. People make mistakes, as you pointed out. It's human driven, even though, it's algorithmic and code driven, like people are at the helm of this. And sometimes this stuff happens. So when a mistake happens, particularly if it's a rounding error to Facebook, then it should be remediated immediately. Like, let's dig into what happened and let's fix that for the future. But it's sort of like a bank error, right? Like where that should be made right immediately because the cost of capital is extremely expensive to direct to consumer brands. And I think that's like the other sort of pain point in this whole, debacle is a decade ago, the D2C 1.0 brands that were venture capital backed and had a war chest of money to go and spend on paid media, this wouldn't really have been that much of a black eye. Like, hey, we've got to get this money back, but it's not like, hey, we've got to get this money back. Whereas, as D2C brands have proliferated over the course of time, there are so many more brands that are running on cash flow, that are running on profits. Yep. In order to like generate those profits, they have to deploy capital in many cases into marketing channels like Facebook, predominantly Facebook and Instagram. And that money needs to return very quickly so they can spend it again. You think about the areas where brands get in trouble. And just before I move on from that, like this is a very sophisticated practice on the media buying side, right? Like we have our constraints, we have our approach, we have our lines that we can't cross. And we're going to test stuff on the margin, but like we need to stay in bounds. So when you get that far out of bounds, things get really sticky and really troublesome. Similarly, like to buying too much inventory, now you've got, capital trapped in inventory, or now you've just like basically torched $26,000 on fire with Facebook that you may never see again.
Right.
Again, we haven't had any direct response globally. I mean, I'm sure on a one-to-one account manager basis there have been, but like no like blanket statement from Facebook or blanket action, which I think is problematic now as we're talking right now, like 5 days removed from this.
There's an old kind of playbook for PR/crisis management, and it is basically rooted in 3 stages. So the first stage is you acknowledge the problem. The second stage is you take ownership of the problem. Hey, this is what broke. We're sorry this broke. And then the third stage is how are we going to fix it and keep this, from not happening in the future. And I think that would have served them really well, where they didn't even need to really, too long didn't read. Rumors and things thrive in a vacuum. And so if Facebook could have just came out and said, hey, we had a bug. Hey, we know a bunch of people spent some money. Hey, we're really sorry. We're working with leadership to make sure that this comes out. And they could, throw some little ambiguous language on it like that. But just having something like you can grab and hold on to, be like, oh, that's not true. This is what actually came from Meta, what have you. I think that was a really big missed opportunity. The one thing I will say why that probably didn't happen, and this is, again, pure speculation, is they have one of the most robust legal departments in the industry. And there was probably a lot of like, if you do that, there might be like some assumption of guilt. And if there's an assumption of guilt, now it makes it really easy to sue you, blah, blah, blah. So tons of moving parts here. But I agree with both you guys. I think that it was really, again, it happens, massive company, but and to your point as well, Nate, is the issue is, for me, or the bigger issue is not necessarily the bigger brands, but those smaller brands, where it's like, I might be spending, X or Y or Z this month, and you just wrecked, 20% of my budget with no performance. And then that gets into some, to your point, cash flow quagmires of like, okay, cool, where am I going to pull money from? Or am I going to take some hit because I'm going to float, an interest, or float basically like a short-term loan on a Amex or something, eat some interest there. Like all these, it's not in a silo. This proliferates out through your whole marketing ecosystem. And I think that's but, to be fair, like monopolies are monopolies. And so like, are you going to stop advertising on Facebook? No. And so that's the monopolies are a hell of a business. And I should have went harder on Facebook when they were down, because I think it popped like almost like 15-70% after hours. I mean, the stock is just absolutely screaming. The numbers are doing great. It looks like they're subsuming TikTok with Reels. And I can tell you just personally, anecdotally, the Instagram ads have been sensational. I mean, it's so crazy to think about the juxtaposition for me of the Instagram ad experience versus Twitter. Like, it's just, it really goes to show, like, it's still the biggest, best ad buy out there. And so I think that's kind of the challenge is, again, there's not a ton of incentive to really, quote unquote, make this right. Because what are you going to do? You're going to yell and scream at the cloud, and then you're going to give Facebook another $20K that day. And so that's the rock and the hard place.
Yeah, that was one of the more like interesting takeaways from this like catalytic event was, it was a lot of like shaking our like the fists at Facebook, like, man, do something about this. And then it was a lot of like holding the like rest of the budget out and being like, when can I put this back in the machine? It sort of underscores, you use the word monopoly, Rabo, like it underscores the like leverage that Facebook and Instagram has. And like, they don't really need to, legal aside, and I'm sure there's a lot of nuance there, like they don't need to do anything because they sort of know that their people are going to come back, and they've been seeing it with the results they just released. Yeah. So it's like, there's not a lot of incentive for them. I part of my responsibility at Feed is to run customer service. And even in previous brands that I worked with, high exposure to customer service, our ability to serve our customers is representative of the trust that we're building with them and the integrity that we have as a brand. And so we manage those relationships very carefully, right? Like, just like owning a restaurant, like if you serve a really bad meal and the customer goes outside and starts screaming that this is the worst restaurant in the world, or goes online and then all of a sudden becomes a story, and then that's a big thing, and now your restaurant's out of business. Like, you have to really be careful about that, and about that trust that you're building and the consistency by which you deliver on the promise you're making. And at least up until now, Facebook's just kind of said like, F it, you know, like you guys, like you're on your own a little bit here, and our brand is so big and ubiquitous that so we're willing to take some black eyes along the way, and, you know, even if it erodes a little bit of trust, which again, there's not a lot of other places for folks to take their money to get the kind of results you can get out of meta platforms.
Yeah, especially at scale. So I mean, leverage, power, monopoly, choose your economics word, but to extend your restaurant analogy, Facebook's the only restaurant. So even if you got a bad meal, you're like, well, do I want to cook tonight or go to the restaurant? Well, it looks like maybe we'll get a Diet Coke at the restaurant and, you know, try the burger again. And so, no, I mean, really eloquently put, guys. I think that it's, you know, again, remains to be seen, but Ash and Nate, you guys make some really good points in terms of, again, like I said, incentives, and like, there's not a ton of incentive for Facebook to really take any blame here. And like, maybe they can go and satiate some of the big players or make sure that, you know what I mean? But is what it is. Speaking of a little bit of a debacle, you were previously at Bonobos, and they just fairly recently, if you will, Walmart purchased them, correct?
Yeah. So I think that was like 2000 and
big money too. It was
2016,
like half a billion or something. Right?
310 million, I think, is the like publicized acquisition price for Walmart acquiring Bonobos.
What recently happened?
Recently was announced, I think maybe a week ago, that Bonobos was then sold by Walmart and acquired by, effectively it was split into two parts. So from my understanding, it was the operational side of the business was acquired for 25 million. And the brand and intellectual property was acquired for 50 million. So total 75 million. And it's sort of like the parent company of Express is the company that acquired Bonobos. And so I think like, if I were to read the tea leaves here, it's a bit of an IP play, leveraging the brand and some of that other intellectual property by Express to continue to grow, reach new customers for them. For Walmart, and again, I'm not close to this situation at this point, but for Walmart, my belief would be that they're just done. They're washing their hands of this, go to direct to consumer, because beyond Bonobos, they had previously acquired ModCloth. They had previously acquired Eloquii. They had previously acquired Moose Jaw. Jet.com.
Jet was the big for, God, that guy's a killer. Diapers.com, and that dude just prints money. He's a monster.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, like I think there was clearly a strategy going into all of that for Walmart. It's hard for me to suss out on the Walmart side as like an observer whether this was all like evil genius type stuff, and I shouldn't use the word evil, but like using that as a proxy. Like, was this like a genius 4D chess move by Walmart? Because their e-commerce has blown up since they started doing this.
Now, it was actually a super spicy purchase at the time, but it really bolstered their online efforts because they were so far behind Amazon that it really kind of put them back in the ballpark.
It might have. You could argue that it worked out for Walmart in total, but the sort of like how they shepherded these brands and how the outcomes for these brands didn't work out objectively. So it's like, what do we learn from that whole situation? Like, what do we learn from, you know, bigger companies acquiring direct-to-consumer brands and how those brands can flourish or not flourish thereafter? And I think the thing that sticks out for me more than anything is, you know, I work for, not directly for Andy, but I work directly for Ty Haney and several other founders in the direct-to-consumer space. And what I've like come to appreciate having worked for that many founders is like the kinetic energy that a brand derives from their founder. And, you know, it's almost like the old adage of like severing the head of the snake. The snake will, you know, can't grow or continue to live. And I believe that to be true. I think like these are folks that, you know, built a brand, something that was special enough in the world to get customers' attention, ultimately get investors' attention, scale to a certain point where they're like notable and interesting, and scale to a point where they're interesting from an acquisition perspective. And that's really, really difficult to do. And there's some genius in there, there's some creativity in there, and there's energy that the founder, that emanates from the founder. So like, with respect to Bonobos, that energy was Andy done. And I don't think you can replicate that. It's almost like taking that sort of like unique, intrinsic human energy and then trying to like replicate it in a laboratory. It's just not possible. You ultimately end up introducing a bunch of other operators from a different business like Walmart to try to like, pull this thing apart and examine all of the pieces and put it back together. But with the machine you're rebuilding or building on top of is not the same as what you purchased. So I think that's like what I take from this is like these D2C brands that are not yet household names. They're not Ralph Lauren. They're not, you name it, Louis Vuitton. Like they're not formed yet. They still need that like adolescent energy from the founders to reach a certain point where the business can be stabilized and the business can level off, and then you can kind of like look at them as an acquisition target. But I now strongly believe that direct-to-consumer brands below a certain scale really need to like continue to tap into that founder energy. I think it's extraordinarily difficult to try to shepherd a brand without the founder at the helm.
Yeah, man, I would agree. I want to get your thoughts on this too, Ash. But you saw the same thing with Stitch Fix, right? Like Stitch Fix was on a tear, and then I believe her name's Katrina Lake, but I could be wrong. Yep. The founder there, she got kicked out, and then it blew up, and then they brought her back in. You see this over and over again, and when I think about it, I can't really think of any really awesome big acquisitions that super scream, like, because to your point, like it's not only this melding of businesses but cultures, and like things just get really weird. It reminds me a lot of do you guys remember when Jobs hired, I think it was still Jobs at the time, he hired the JCPenney guy to run all the Apple stores, and it was just this absolute debacle. I think he like for a C-suite person to get booted in 6 to 8 months is essentially unheard of in the company, or, companies that size. Like a C-suite hire is just a very thorough diligence. Like, you're not hiring this person and let them go within the next 5 years. Like there's life cycles on these. And so I think that mismatch really happens because you also, there's some parallels a little bit here, definitely not in scale, but like the Solo Stove roll up where they started rolling everything up. And again, they had massive haircuts, whether it was the actual business performance and or just the market perception. But that has not been really, a great play financially yet. Maybe it's, to your point, like there's 4D chess going on here, and this is some sort of like higher play move that none of us can get our heads around. But I really can't think of any, like, maybe and this is kind of getting out of the realm of D2C, but like the Slack sales force, like Slack is still pretty decent-ish. But anytime you get, and to be fair, I think there has been a big, it was more so a put under the umbrella of Salesforce than actually like an absorption into the company, if that makes sense. But I agree with you, man. I think that there's, especially at certain scales, there's just so much need for founder vision, founder energy. And I would even exacerbate that even more with apparel or some sort of like lifestyle brand where it really needs to stay the cool kids, right? Allbirds got haircuts. Like there's a lot of people that are just taking these haircuts. But what's your take, Melanie?
I'll give you two examples, right? So there's one with, do you guys remember Freshly?
Yeah.
Nestle bought them for about $1 billion, right? Successful, direct-to-consumer meal package, pre-made meals packaged, delivered to the door and everything. Pandemic hit, that model like just exploded, right? And then you kind of come back into restrictions of jobs. You can go out, you can eat out, whatever, it doesn't matter. And like this whole business is kind of like, all right, you're starting to realize what the actual like revenue really is. So one, I don't think bigger brands who are like so primarily focused on like that retail place, like they don't have the corporate structure to understand what it takes to like maneuver through these like, I guess, times and then try to like come out at the end of it successful, right? So a lot of D2C brands that went through like the pandemic, especially even like apparel brands or even like beauty brands where people weren't leaving their house and like, why are you buying clothes? Why are you buying makeup? Like it just doesn't make sense. To be able to maneuver that, you need that founder, that leader that really understands why they made the business and what that reason is to keep going. And I think that's why like Freshly failed, right? Like I think Nestle ended that entire business. I think they sold it out and they merged with another retail brand. But I think that's where it's like the corporate structure is so key, where if you just can't mesh on a cultural perspective, it's just not going to work. And especially when things get tough, right? And then a second example, there's a brand that we know. Again, I'm not going to name a name because it is a smaller size business. But they got bought out. Half of the company was bought out by a bigger PE firm, and you can tell. Right, when you go and look at their like ad library, go and look at their like website now, their landing pages, everything has completely changed. Like this was a brand we looked up to, right? And it was just like, oh, like we really like their ads, we really like their direct response landing pages because everything made sense. Now you go and look at everything, everything's just been stripped away. Everything's just been like, there's no direct response aspects or elements about it, and it's like, what was the reason? Like, why did this change? Like, is it like even still doing well to this day, right? So I think what ended up happening is that when you have half of the company to be bought out, the founder is like, all right, well, cool, like I got my money, I'm chilling, I can go buy a house in upstate New York and live my life, and if you need me, I'm a phone call away, right? So I think that's where it's like, there's two things where it's like on the small business side, we'd love to get acquired and kind of like, all right, on to the next thing. But then like these brands suffer, and I think like the buying partners are just like, well, don't know what to do. And like, for example, Nestle, cool, $1 billion business, it shuts down, they're good regardless. So that's my thoughts on it.
Retention.com isn't just sponsoring ad spend, and Retention.com isn't just there to help you grow your email funnels. They're also an amazing resource for marketers. Check out their podcasts, check out their YouTube channel, check out their resources, including the 5 fundamental marketing flows you need to grow. Get all of that at retention.com. The link is in the description below.
I totally agree with all of that, what you guys just said. I think like even on like a non-acquisition on a smaller scale, like how startups build their teams, like oftentimes, you know, you're like, hey, I've got this like really big problem to solve. And you look at the team that you have in place and you're like, I don't know if we've got it covered with this team. And so oftentimes the strong urge is to like go and find someone like super experienced that comes from a corporate background with all of this structure. And they're like, all right, let's bring them in to like mature this, to like elevate our process and our practice and how we're thinking about things, and like really like take us to the next level. Seen it like 100,000 times in my career. And like more often than not, that doesn't work out, right? Because you're introducing this sort of like corporate element into a like homegrown team, right? It's almost like a baseball team where you've got a bunch of like misfit guys who like come together and play really well together. And then you bring in the like high-priced, high-priced like talent, A-Rod to come in and hit cleanup. And the team doesn't succeed because everyone's like jealous of the guy. The guy doesn't understand why he's playing with all these other players. It's that type of like relationship where I think it's very difficult to go from corporate to startup. It's very difficult, at least in the direct consumer realm, and have things work out, you know, because those like small teams, the early teams, the teams that have grown up around the founder are like, hey, I worked in the beginning, I was like shipping orders myself. Now I'm doing like, I'm the head of marketing, you know, and like they have that maturation. They're fully bought into what's going on. They have this sort of like, in the best way possible, the ignorance of gravity, right?
Yes.
Like, so they're like, anything is possible because we've done it, you know, and we can get there by doing things that are really scrappy and really like fun, and we can like try different things. And so they have this sort of like naivete that is really the superpower of growing a brand below a certain scale. That's sort of a good proxy for like some of these acquisition stories, is because it just fundamentally changes the chemistry of the team that's really powering what's happening and what the outcomes are for the brand. So it's really difficult to do. And I think like what I've learned from that is, you know, experience is nice, but just the right amount, you know, like you don't, as a business, it's really tough you're putting yourself in a tough place to over index on like experience and maturity and all of that kind of stuff. Particularly as you're trying to grow really fast and like figure out who you are in the world and why you exist as a brand.
No, that's a bar. I love that, ignorance of gravity. I agree with what you're saying. I think the most successful acquisitions happen in more of that benefactor realm than they do the proper acquisition, where it's like, you got daddy money now. If you need help, let us know. If you need a legal team, what have you. But to your point, Nate, it is, I think of it almost in a dichotomy of growers and optimizers. And when you get to this corporate culture, all you're really doing is trying to squeeze out this next half point, this next point. And that is totally different than trying to hit another growth trajectory. And and this is also why I'm super bearish. I'll give 0% chance he listens to the podcast, but like, and you're seeing it in the stock too, like open store. Like, the idea that you can mash up all of these insanely nuanced businesses and then somehow have like some synergies around it. The Amazon aggregators are arguably easier business, and that hasn't netted out. Like Thrasio is getting wrecked, and then Open Store getting wrecked. Like, I just don't see how you get the operational efficiencies unless it's almost close to like fully ensconced corporate. But then there's no growth story, so you're not going to get any money. So it's this paradox, right?
Yeah.
Once I get to a place that I'll actually be able to ingratiate and integrate with your system and culture and structure, I'm no longer an acquisition target. But when I am an acquisition target, the probability of failure is so high because of all these nuances, because of this cultural shifts. Like, and so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm with you. I mean, it is not or has yet to been proven out as a viable model, because every single bet at small to huge scale has candidly either been a write-off or you're selling at a huge haircut just to scrape some money back from the initial investment. So I think there's just a huge misconception of how nuanced D2C businesses are, especially in that growth stage, because like you said, Nate, like that ignorance of gravity will not fly in corporate. Like that type of mentality will get you fired the next day. And so like predictability is what corporate wants. And like the hardest thing in D2C is predictability. And so again, there's just these kind of like orthogonal incentives that just candidly don't align with what the businesses do well. And so I don't know, it's fascinating though to see, you know, and hopefully the founders made a little bit of scratch so that goes there. But what an interesting combo. One of your biggest proficiencies is obviously operations. And then I want to get your take on this, Ash, as well. How do you kind of match supply and demand, if you will? Because one of the biggest death rattles for a D2C brand is generating all this demand and then out of stock, right? Or the inverse of the demand gen is lacking and now I'm sitting on a pile of widgets. How do you modulate that and you're even in a worse place than Ash, or not worse, that's a pejorative, but a more complicated place than Ash, because apparel is just the king of complexity, right? You have not only sizing, you have colorways, you have and those two things make this big matzo ball of inventory risk. How do you deal with that, Nate?
Good question, and it's probably the one like question of all that I've been spending my entire career trying to figure out. It's something I work on every single day, trying to like get behind the sort of like curve and understand like all the things that are driving that relationship between supply and demand. Taking it back like a bit of a pre-D2C or pre-e-commerce history lesson, like brands in general, particularly apparel brands and other brands that have complex inventory base were like what was characterized as merchant driven. So you had like merchandising, which is almost like a dead word in D2C, as like the core function of the business. And you have the creative piece of the brand as well, like either rolled up in that or sitting above that. And what that means to me is like product drove demand. You know, like you would continue to create product out into the future, design into product, develop product, deliver product on like a cyclical timeline. And you would open retail stores or deliver this product into wholesale. And it was really incumbent upon like the physical retail space or a wholesaler's retail space and the salespeople on the floor of vice versa to sell that product. now we fast forward to like the e-commerce era, direct to consumer in like modern times, going back to the Facebook Meta and sort of like the way that we deploy marketing spend against our inventory. It happens in real time. It happens super fast. And in a lot of cases, the ability to like grow and scale and test on the marketing side happens very quickly. And the product engine that feeds into that hasn't really gotten that much faster.
Yep.
So what ends up happening in this modern world is there's a sort of like been a lean of the organization from merchant-led organizations to marketing-led organizations. And, the head of growth becomes the rock star in the organization, like the one who's going to like stand on the top of the mountain and deliver the revenue on an ongoing basis. And that comes with a lot of pressure to grow the business. And so on the marketing side, it's this sort of like test, scale, iterate, try a lot of different things. If there's an ad that's working, double, triple down on it, like how fast can we go on this? And because the inventory doesn't work that way, it blows holes like Swiss cheese through the inventory. So to your point, Rabo, it's like all of a sudden you're out of stock or you're have too much of this, not enough of that.
Yep.
And the way that I've been able to get around this best is to try to get the marketing team as a merchant, to try to get the marketing team to swim all the way upstream in our product lifecycle. So I know that there's a battle that's being fought on a daily basis, but come with us. I'll grab your hand, come with us, like all of the entire marketing team and all of the stores and all that kind of stuff. Come with us and sit in on how we're thinking about the product roadmap, which is the things that we're going to create 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now. And like give us input on that. Let's like go on this journey together. And then when we come back to you with like prototypes of these products, like tell us what you think and start to imagine the story in your mind of how we're going to tell the customer about why this product is amazing. And then we go further down into the product life cycle of now we're actually going to buy it. So this is the point where we take the company's capital and invest it in this product. And so as marketers and as people who buy product, whether they be merchandising, finance or operations, we've got to really hash this out. We have to align on what is most important? How do we rank these products that we're going to be selling? How many do we think we're going to sell? How many new customers? How many repeat customers do we think we're going to generate? How might that impact the complexity of the inventory that we're buying that we're going to sell out into the future? And we really go through what is the margin, like how are we going to invest in this inventory? And then we agree on that as marketers and operations folk. We pass that off to the factory, and then the go-to-market process sort of takes shape from a marketing perspective. And the best way to get this right is to go as granular as you can. And it's very painstaking and it's annoying and it's troublesome to do as a practice. But as a inventory investor, I'm going all the way down to the SKU level and I'm planning every single week out into the future how many I'm going to sell. When do I start selling? When do I stop selling? When does it get marked down or whatever? When do we get rid of it? So there's a very clear articulated plan on that. And then I have what I call altitudes above that. So I have, how does that individual SKU roll up into a product? So if it's a size, like size medium of a hoodie, it rolls up into a product. That color of the hoodie rolls up into a bigger product, which is probably the Shopify product. Then it rolls up into a subcategory and a category. And so I can take all of the assumptions that I've made at the lowest level of detail and start to aggregate those up such that I get to the top line plan. And I do that. That's what's basically called open to buy. Like I'm planning my sales. How much am I open to buy to go out and invest in to be able to deliver those sales in the future? On the marketing side, that practice needs to be mimicked on some level. So this is a lot of what I do in the various brands that I've been is like sit with marketing and finance and talk about how we're going to make investments in product and marketing, and we're going to plan them out in the future such that they come together in harmony and we maximize both of those streams. As the two, outside of like overhead, the two like biggest line items in your P&L are going to be ad spend, marketing spend in general, and cost of goods sold. How do we disaggregate all of the different channels we're spending in? How do we estimate the return on investment? How do we estimate the new and repeat customers? How do we roll that up into like a structured plan of how we're going to then promote all of this product? How do we take all of the product that we're buying and like make sure we analyze our marketing real estate? How much bandwidth, how much space do we have to tell all these stories and disproportionately tell the stories we invested most of our dollars against? Like one of the worst things you can do as a business, maybe the worst, is to buy something you don't want to market.
Yeah.
You get there, like the product arrives and you're like, this is kind of boring. I don't want to do this. That's really bad. You have to like agree when you buy it that we're going to make a big deal out of this. This is going to be a huge thing. And you've got to put your money where your mouth is, basically, on both sides to go out and spend against it. Now, obviously, as you do this and you deliver it into the world and the customer's telling you about, okay, I love this, I don't love that. Maybe you thought this was going to be amazing and it wasn't. You got to make adjustments and stuff like that. But the better your assumptions are, the better the alignment is, the better the shared understanding and enrollment in how you're going to deliver the sales between marketing and product, the more successful you're going to be downstream. And there's other ways that we can get into if you guys would like, but there's other ways that you can manage the like reactivity piece of it. But those are going to take you plus or minus 10% of where you thought you were going to be.
Yeah.
Like 90% of where you could be going needs to happen before that inventory is purchased. And that needs to be like really feeling sturdy between marketing and product.
Ash, I want to hear your take, but let me ask you one more, Nate. That was a sensational.
That was great.
Yeah. I'd never thought of the bottoms up approach or get down to, I think you say this in one of your essays, like the atomic levels, right? And then you put those atoms together that then make more complex organisms, to extend the analogy. And then all of a sudden you have this huge, multi-complex system that is your business. One quick question, and then I want to hear how Ash does it at Avi, because they have a little less complexity in their inventory because they don't have colorways, they don't have sizes, etc. What do you do when you start to get into that plus or minus 10%? So you hire Ash, he's killing it, and he's like, hey, Nate, marketing's doing way better for this product than I thought. Do you pull back some of that acquisition aggression because you don't want to go out of stock? Do you say, let's go out of stock and we'll do a pre-order? And then vice versa, on the other side, you hire me and I'm not hitting your performance goals. And you're like, hey, Robbo, what's going on? We're under 10% of our projections. Do you spend more money? Do you change strategies? Because those are kind of, like you said, if you can get the 90% right, then it gets into those inflection points, right? Of like, dude, we're on a rocket. We're going to run out of gas. Do you still want to just stay in space? Or like, hey, the walls are closing in. How do we move this inventory to increase the product velocity to get back to our projections?
As a general like blanket statement, as someone who is like a steward of profitability and gross margin, I'm allergic to paying to market a product that's going to sell out on its own. Even if something does exceptionally well beyond our wildest dreams, and we're marketing it to make it go faster, knowing that it's going to sell out before we can get more, that is a suboptimal decision for a brand to make. They should immediately stop spending on that product. And I don't guarantee you, but for the vast majority of brands, there is some other product that's not moving as fast that could use a little help, that you could use a little love. So I think one of the things that could be turned on its head with respect to modern marketing and direct to consumer is it's actually the products that don't move fast that need the most help in many cases. Now, you can't really grow a business that way because there are bad products, right? Like there are products that are like, well, it's moving slow because it sucks and no one wants it. And the more that you shout about how great it is, the less brand equity you build because they are selling something I don't want. This is terrible. So the other way to do, so I would not spend against, I would try to build stories around these other products that reinvigorate them, that shed different light on them, that are brand accretive. If that's not an option, or actually in parallel to that, every business, going back to that granularity, the lowest level, the atomic element, is the core of your business, your best product. Why you exist in the world. For Bonobos, it was pants, like great fitting pants with a curved waistband. For Outdoor Voices, it was color block leggings, as they were getting going.
Yeah.
And so like the atomic unit of that business are those hero products. And that right away. Like that was the first pair that Andy and Brian made at Stanford. It was Tyler Heaney's capstone project that she did coming out of Parsons Design School. Like these are things that are like the very core element of what started the business. Those are things that someone told me once that that's your heartbeat.
Yep.
right? And so just like your body, you want to get your heart beating, blood as efficiently as possible, as fast as possible. It allows you to like breathe, that allows you to like feel like you're healthy, it allows you to run faster, all that kind of stuff. So figure out what those core elements are. And from a like stay in stock perspective, I want as an operator to be able to never have to tell my marketer, stop marketing this.
Right.
These are the acquisition products that we're going to scale into perpetuity on. And so the job of the marketer is not to downshift on those ever. The job of the marketer is to figure out how we can build a scalable engine to like make this go to the moon. And then my job is to build a supply chain behind that to like always stay in stock. So the way we think about that is like inventory planners and operators is the compression of time. You know, like how long does it take to make this component that goes into the product?
Yep.
How long does it take to manufacture it? How long does it take to deliver it and
Get
stock
on the water, get it. Yep.
How do we take what usually takes 90 days or maybe longer, depending on your product, to 30 days? And then once we get to 30, how do we make it 7?
Yep.
And then now we've got this thing that's just churning and burning. Yep. Cash conversion negative. So we're like generating cash on it, which
Powerful
we can then feed back to marketing. And so you do that at the atomic level, and then you move on to the next product and the next product and the next product. And that's where profitability comes from, is that practice of like linking those worlds together.
Yeah, that's amazing. Melwani, what's your guys' take in terms of how you keep up with your incredible ads and keeping stocked up and stuff? Because have you guys out of stock before? Or no, you guys are pretty
all the time. No,
all the time.
All the time. That's where maturity of the business kind of comes in, where like you're still figuring that out, where you're trying to like, okay, well, we got to sell through this inventory to pay for the next round, right? So we can't slow down because technically you need that cash to now kind of get the next bigger,
Yep.
PO in the run. But I think a lot of what Nate said is super critical, and I'll give you guys like a real world example here, where when we first started, right, we launched 2 flavors of a collagen protein, right? The formula was super basic. We literally looked at everybody else. We said, all right, we just need 10 grams of collagen in it, and it needs to be flavored, and that's it, right? So sold it, right? Took 2 weeks to sell it. We had an influencer push. We pushed on ads, and like there was some interest in a flavored collagen, right? And so we're like, oh, we got something here. 2 weeks sold out, and that's where we went back to the drawing board. And we're like, okay, on our next run, what do we need to do to now make this better? Because now this is going to be the established product, right? So got feedback from consumers where it's like, okay, the flavor needs to be a little less sweet. Why else? Like, why should I buy this over another like collagen protein, right? And for us, it's like, well, it's the taste. And they're like, well, okay, but like why else, right? So we're like, okay, formula wise, do we have a better formula so that if somebody comes back and says, hey, does the product like actually work better? Yes, it does. Does it taste better? Yes, it does, right? So on a marketing standpoint, we're determining what we need to fuel the fire for like benefits on the ads, the landing pages and everything. And then going back to like R&D and supply chain and everything and be like, hey, this is what we need in the formula. Can you get this for us so that we can scale this even more, right? So it's stepping up to bat with all your ammo for marketing and then implementing it into the product, right? So I think those 2 teams definitely need to like conversate. And again, for us, it was just the 3 of us. So it really was all 3 of us just doing everything. So it naturally happened. And then even now we have this new burn powder that we launched last year. Okay. I think it was a formula that was given to us by our manufacturer saying like, oh, we got these ingredients in it and like, it's going to do really well. And they kind of like pushed us to sell it because they're like, I think it'll do really well in the community. So we went through it and it sold. People were like, I don't understand these ingredients. I don't understand why I'm buying this product. The taste is okay, but like, I'm okay with whatever, right? Then you have like the subset of group of people who are like, I love Avi. I'm going to use whatever you guys said, put out. But if we want to make this a market leader, we have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, what else needs to go in this so that I can market it better than any other collagen proteins in the market, right? So this is where I feel like supplement companies, again, this is probably giving out too much sauce, but it's like go and find these like ingredient manufacturers where they've come up with patented ingredients that have clinical studies that you can now go license and put it in your product, because the marketing benefits and the claims that you can make are 10 times better than what anybody else can say, right? So we're relaunching this product with this one benefit or this one ingredient that now you can claim really crazy things because they actually have studies behind it. And that's what makes my marketing better. And that's where it's like, I can go back to Ron and say, hey, I'm actually able to market this 10 times better than I could last time. Let's take a bet on it and order more. I think in terms of like ordering and supply and demand, it's like, it should also start with, can the marketing team really push it in an efficient manner? And if not, it's tough to say, okay, should we be ordering X amount, this amount, right? Second part to that is when you have that consumer base, especially within our community, these guys they're gonna buy anything, right? So it's like, I don't necessarily need to put out the world's best pre-workout. I just need something that tastes good, and the community is gonna eat it up. It works and it tastes good. That's all they care about because they already sold on Avi being Avi, right? So I think there's two sides to it where you're trying to make that like main, magnet to the brand, and that needs to be, marketable and everything. But then there's that secondary tier where it's like, okay, well, we can put out what we need to put out just because there's demand within the customer base.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think like kind of like paralleling that to, apparel brands and stuff like that. Always like iteration is such a key component. Iterate on what's working, iterate on what's not working. Like we go through a process of like hindsighting everything, like what did we learn from what just happened and how do we apply that on future products to make it better? And similarly on the marketing side, like pushing back and being like, hey, the reason why this didn't work isn't because we didn't have great, go to market. We didn't have a great like advertising angle. You guys need to improve this product. Like it just fundamentally wasn't competitive in the market and it needs to get better. So that like tension, and that's why like, organization and how you build your team, like you got to build a team where there's always that tension between product and marketing, where they're like pushing you on each other, questioning each other. Iron sharpens iron. Like the worst thing you could do is have like everyone agree on everything all the time. Yeah. Nothing will ever change or get done,
I think one thing, and I don't know if you would classify like this under marketing, but like even customer service, right? They're dealing with all the tickets of like, all right, here's why I want to return this product. Oh, why? Like, because it's X, Y, and Z, right? I think even including those people in the conversation is so crucial to those iterations that you were talking about, because they have like that direct insight versus like on marketing, it's like, well, I know what the benefits are. Let me tell the benefits. But then customer service is like, well, like they actually care about this, So I think maybe it falls under marketing. I think to a certain degree it probably does, but include customer service for sure.
I love that. I do want to do one or two quick questions. This has been stellar stuff. We'll start with you, Ash, and we'll give our guests some time to think on it. If you could create a marketing campaign for a fictional product from a movie or book, what would it be and why?
Oh, I think right off the bat, maybe like a wand from Harry Potter.
Let's go.
Think about like the marketing. There's so many marketing angles that you could probably create. But yeah, I think a wand would be sick.
I like that. Nate, what you got for me?
Man, that is tough.
I'll fill some time for you while you think. I'm going Back to the Future hoverboard.
Oh,
gangster,
hoverboard.
Easy,
that's
amazing,
such a great one.
Amazing product, awesome.
Further blocked me into this world. I can't think of anything. I'm sorry.
The ops guy living up to it.
I don't know. Sorry.
Okay, let's do one more. We got 2 more minutes. If you could combine 2 completely different products into a new bizarre product, what would they be, and how would you market it?
This is gonna sound really dumb, but imagine like a beer pong table split in 2, but you're riding the hoverboard and you got a table on each one. You got to like score it in each person's like, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if that would ever work. You'd have to have an insane aim for that, but we're going to go with that.
The good old college try. I love it.
It's a tough one, man.
I'm going to say it again. On the spot. It's hey, we're all hitters here. I'm actually stealing it because it's already a fake collab, but the Hermes Birkin bag and Birkenstocks. And so the Birkenstocks are actually made out of the Birkin bags. It's amazing. It's a great collab.
There was also one recently where someone took, what like the binder clips look like, and they made a handbag out of it. And then I can't remember which brand it was, but one of the like high profile fashion handbag brands did like a paper bag made out of leather that looks like an actual paper bag, which I thought was really compelling.
I do love that.
If I were to do a product, it'd be like, I'd probably mash up like the software of an iPhone with like a personal, like an airplane. I basically I would like to go anywhere I want it to go, but like powered by iOS.
Like CarPlay, but for PJs.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just like hands off, takes you where you want to go. You got your whole like setup there. You got music there. Like that'd be a superlative product.
Let's go.
I don't know if this counts, but I miss my Blackberry, and if we could get iMessage back on Blackberry, that'd be great.
That's actually a pretty good answer. Oh, you were a Blackberry guy, huh?
I miss the keyboard, honestly.
You know what I miss? The kids won't ever know the absolute bliss of the clam phones and hanging up on somebody. Where it's like, and then you smash it and you're just, it was just immeasurable.
Yeah,
it's not the
like
same.
The original Razor, just like that.
It's
like ASMR, like the click of it, like, and it had a little spring that, like, when you moved a little bit, it would just like slam.
I was in love with that phone. What a crazy phone.
So good.
Nate, how can the people follow you? Where can they get some feet stuff? Whatever else you want to plug. This time's yours, my friend.
Follow me on Twitter at digitally native with no E. I'm still working on getting the E, so I apologize for that. And then hit us up at feetclothing.com. And yeah, check it out. We're all about keeping you comfortable mentally and physically. We got some great products, and we're dropping a collab. Not sure if you'll hear it until after the collab drops, but we're dropping a collab on the 28th that everyone should check out.
Can you spill the tea with who, or are you close to the chest?
So we've done work with this influencer in the past, but Helen Owen, she's incredible.
Yeah.
She designed the capsule from the ground up. It's all new. It's all her taste and her vibe. And she and Taylor, our founder, are at Stagecoach right now, kicking it. And we're going to launch tomorrow.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Yeah, some of the softest stuff on the planet. And you guys also have, if you're in, is it Santa Monica, or where's the retail present?
2708 Main Street, Santa Monica. And then we're available in a handful of Dillard's and Von Maur throughout the country.
Oh, really? That's dope. Amazing.
Yep.
All right, Milwana, I know you got to go get the ears taken up a bit, but before then, if I am driving and I all of a sudden see a hurt pigeon in the road, but then I also see a vitamin shop, what do I do?
That pigeon is not going to make it, because you are sprinting to that vitamin shop and you're demanding to pick up some Avi collagen. You slam that on the cashier's desk and you ask them to check it out. And you head on home and you make yourself a shake. And then you hop on Twitter, follow me there at Ashwin Milani. Just did my 50th Mentor Pass session, so if you need any help there, hit me up there. But that's it for me.
Don't forget to plug Chew on This, sensational pod.
Season 2, Chew on This is filming soon. So check it out. We're giving out some free swag. Go to chewonthis.io and stay tuned.
Amazing. Are you on Mentor Pass, Nate?
I am, yeah.
Oh,
hit me here.
Amazing. Go get this man smarts on the Mentor Pass. Shout out, Kenny. Let's go. All right, folks, what do I got to plug? We got, if you do want to get more awesomeness, to jump to triplewell.com. Amazing analytics, attribution, business insights, all the good anomaly detection, rules engine, save you from all the chaos that Facebook has been promoting throughout the ecosystem. What else we got? We have another sister show called You're Not Your ROAS, where I interview the movers and shakers in the industry. The last one was with a really good friend of mine, Awesome, the co-founder of Soul CBD. This guy, so he used to be a pro boxer. He got to box in the Garden. He got to box on the undercard in, what's the other place, in MGM Grand, like the meccas of sports. Really awesome pod, and was in studio too, so you can check out the studio there. What else do I got? And then lastly, we have a fantastic newsletter called Well Mel, goes out every Tuesday, Thursday. You'll actually see some of this man's writing in there. He's now a contributor on the Triple Well Network. Some of the smartest stuff. The Hanging Monkeys is great. There's you have a real talent. Quite the wordsmith you are, Nate. So go check that out. You can read articles not only on the site, but also on Whale Mail. You can subscribe right at triplewell.com/Whale Mail. And then lastly, if you don't want the auditory nectar and you want to see our beautiful faces, you can go to youtube.com/triplewell. We post all of our podcasts on the channel. Nate, you're a legend, dude. Thank you so much for making time in your schedule. You're an absolute man. I really, really appreciate it. Milwani, go get the cut. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, guys.
Drop some reviews, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Safe word. So we give away merch at the end of the show. What's the safe word that they message me?
Cincinnati.
That was right off the cuff, and you can't even give me unbelievable. This guy, unbelievable. Okay, message me on either Twitter at Robert Ray Hill or LinkedIn, Robert Ray Hill, the word Cincinnati, and we'll send you out some wonderful Triple Well merch. It really is the best in the business. All right, folks. Sorry, I'm 5 over Milwani, but close enough-ish. Thank you, guys. You're the best. That's another ad spin in the books. We'll see you on the flip. Bye-bye.